Sige po, it's officially 5:05. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to have you po here. I'm glad we're all here safe and dry. I hope you got to eat outside din po. Okay. We'll begin today's event po with an opening prayer. The following prayer is a poem written by writer and teacher Danusha Lameris. If applicable to you, I invite you all to please make the sign of your faith. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Small Kindnesses by Danusha Lameris. I've been thinking about the way when you walk down a crowded aisle, people pull in their legs to let you by. Or how strangers still say, "Bless you," when someone sneezes a leftover from the bubonic plague. Don't die, we are saying. And sometimes, when you spill lemons from your grocery bag, someone else will help you pick them up. Mostly, we don't want to harm each other. We want to be handed our cup of coffee hot and to say thank you to the person handing it, to smile at them and for them to smile back, for the waitress to call us honey when she sets down the bowl of clam chowder, and for the driver in the red pickup truck to let us pass. We have so little of each other now, so far from tribe and fire, only these brief moments of exchange. What if they are the true dwelling of the holy, these fleeting temples we make together when we say, "Here, have my seat, go ahead, you first, I like your hat." In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, Amen. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all got to eat outside din po. We are happy to have you here in Leong Hall for today's talk, Revisiting Ateneo in Service of the Nation 50 Years After. My name is Serge Gabriel from the Office for Social Concern and Involvement in the Department of Philosophy, and I'll be your moderator po for this afternoon. To get today's event started, I would like to call on Dr. Benjamin Gerardo T. Tolosa Jr., the current Vice President for Mission Integration.
Thank you, Serge, and good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for your presence in a historic event. The theme of this year's commemoration of the Declaration of Martial Law, or ML at 52, is Tugon ng Sambayanan, Paglilingkod sa Kapwa. When the committee convened by the Ateneo Martial Law Museum and Library met to discuss and formulate the theme, we said that we need to put the experience of martial law in the larger frame of the situation and challenges in the country and the world at that time. Moreover, we felt it is important to appreciate how the Ateneo de Manila itself, as an institution and as a community, responded to the signs of the times as a Filipino Catholic and Jesuit university. It is understandable and quite justified that commemorations of martial law tend to focus on its explicitly political dimensions, especially the destruction of democratic institutions, abuse of power and corruption, the suppression of dissent, and the violation of human rights, including the imprisonment, torture, and killing of oppositionists and activists, particularly those who went underground. At the same time, however, such an emphasis overlooks a crucial aspect of the personal stories of Ateneans and the institutional history of the Ateneo, both before and during martial law. Many of the responses and initiatives were not necessarily political in character, at least not initially and overtly, but were more oriented towards social formation and involvement, community organizing, and participatory development. These efforts had cultural or countercultural effects and were deeply personal in the sense that they had a transformative impact on lifestyles, life choices, and life goals. And arguably, they became the base for the active nonviolent struggle that culminated in EDSA. They drew inspiration from gospel values and Catholic social teaching, a faith that does justice. The famous Down from the Hill Manifesto of 1968 criticized the irrelevance of Ateneo education and called for greater responsiveness to the Philippine situation. It led to the Philippinization movement, which brought about changes in top administrative personnel, curriculum content, language and methodology, and in the thrust of student activities. But its deeper meaning lay in the challenge to be in greater solidarity with and service to the majority of Filipinos who were poor and marginalized. That's why during the period of student activism of the late 1960s and early 1970s, and of martial law beginning in September 1972, the summons from Jesuit Superior General Father Pedro Arupe in July 1973 to form Men and Women for Others resonated with those in the Ateneo de Manila community who were already trying to live it out. That was the year Father Ben Nebres became Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. The following year, in September 1974, exactly 50 years ago, Father Ben presented his vision for the Ateneo in a faculty convocation. He asked, what is the role of an elite school in the service of the people? He outlined how the Ateneo can respond to the challenges of the Philippine situation in its research, teaching, and community service. He pointed to the need for restructuring and reorientation in the university towards greater responsiveness to and engagement with the poor. That speech has marked a generation of Ateneans. For example, Mr. Eddie Boy Calasans, who graduated in 1974 and was a new philosophy teacher then, messaged me from France to attest to that. Dr. Assunta C Cuyegkeng, one of our reactors today, was a first-year college student that school year. And I myself was a freshman on the last year of Father Ben's term as dean in 1979 to 1980. His vision has shaped people, programs, institutions, and culture in the Ateneo since then. So to frame our commemoration of ML at 52, the Office of the Vice President for Mission Integration and the Office for Social Concern and Involvement have requested Father Ben Nebres to revisit his speech, Ateneo in the Service of the Nation, 50 years later, its context, insights, proposals, and impact, as well as the continuing challenges for the Ateneo de Manila community today, particularly amidst the Jesuit and university priorities of walking with the poor and excluded and bridging cultural divides. We have also invited members of our academic community coming from different generations, Dr. Assunta C Cuyegkeng, Dr. Lance Bolano, and Mr. Lee Rosendo to serve as reactors from the perspective of their fields of interest, experiences, and engagements of service in the Ateneo and the country. So I now have the honor and privilege of introducing our keynote speaker, national scientist and professor of mathematics, former president of the Ateneo de Manila and Xavier University, former provincial superior of the Philippine Jesuits, and of course, former dean of the Ateneo College of Arts and Sciences. He's presently engaged in various programs to help overcome poverty in the country by improving public education in over 400 public schools with the Ateneo Center for Educational Development, or ACE, and in over 300 municipalities, particularly in BARM, with Sinergia Foundation, building homes and communities for the poor with Gawad Kalinga, and in supporting young people engaged in social enterprises for poor communities. A man for others, Father Bienvenido, Father Ben Nebres, SJ.
So good evening to all of you. It's almost evening. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you, of course, to Dr. Benji Tolosa and the Office of the Vice President for Mission Integration for organizing this kind of remembrance. So I'll go to the points, and I guess just hopefully we'll have time to think about all of them. Where's the point? Oh, there. Sorry. I don't have the other one. Oh, there. Sorry. Okay. First of all, I want to point out to you that there's actually a book published by University Press which goes in great detail about what was happening in the first 10 years of martial law, 1972 to 82. So if you want more detail about what I'm saying, you can go to it. This speech of mine is contained there. The Men for Others of Father Arupe is also in there. The manifesto of the students in 1968, Down from the Hill, are there. So a lot of documents are in this book. Sorry. All right. So, I better come down here. It's too stupid. So, when you look back to that period, what shaped us, the motivation was, first of all, student activism. So it was not martial law. There was no martial law in 1968. It was student activists who, I think in the graduation of 1968, came out with a very strong manifesto called Down from the Hill. And if you read as to what it says that we find the Ateneo is irrelevant to the Philippine situation because it can do no more than serve the power elite. This was not unique to the Philippines, and it's not unique to Ateneo. It hit all Catholic schools in the Philippines. And in fact, St. Teresa's College closed their college in San Marcelino because the sense is that such colleges were irrelevant to the poverty of the country. In Mexico, the Jesuits in Mexico closed the equivalent of Ateneo de Manila, Instituto Patria, because of the feeling that this kind of education was irrelevant to the needs of the poor. So the context was it was not small. It was a very challenging situation for everybody. And so the point made by them was that the Ateneo and the Society of Jesus must, like the Philippine Church, identify herself with the oppressed masses. So that was the Ateneo students. So the other interest, of course, the church. The church had just come out with a document, and Justice in the Modern World, very strong about identification with the poor. And then we took over in April of 1973, and that very month, the Jesuits had a 1 month-long congress in Baguio to discuss this justice in the modern world. And this was the summary of Father de la Costa. He summarized the meeting. Our main thrust is service to the church and people, the vast majority of whom are poor, that is, deprived, disadvantaged, oppressed. We have to remove the oppressive structures which prevent them from being fully human, and we have to help them assume responsibility with the realization of their own identity. So there was a call from the students, from the church, and from the Society of Jesus. And then that very powerful address of Father Pedro Arupe in 1973, we commemorated it last year, to alumni of all Jesuit schools, saying that our objective should be, the prime objective should really be to form men and women for others, men and women who cannot think of living a life without caring for the most marginalized in society. It was a very powerful talk with a tremendous influence all over. So, I had myself been engaged. So in other words, I wasn't just responding. I had personally been very engaged in these problems for a very long time. In my early years, I really was very interested in the social developments in the country. I was very interested in peasant revolts. I had studied the communist movement, the socialist movement, the peasant revolts. I had spent a lot of time in my early years trying to understand the social problems of the Philippines. So all of this is resonated with me. And so the question then is, how should we address this? And what I want to point out is that this was not just a response to the poor. It was the question of whether we should still be running Ateneo de Manila. So it was a very big challenge for us. Because there were Jesuit activists as well who said we should close Ateneo de Manila. It's irrelevant. We should just be there with the poor. So it was also for us to justify to the society, to fellow Jesuits, and to justify to others that we should still continue. So it was really a very challenging situation. And so that's what I tried to address in that talk. And so the question is, how do we address this question of for whom sorry. For whom and for what should the Ateneo be? And I said, within the areas of research, teaching, and community service, we find that our task is to dedicate ourselves to our people, and maybe explicitly to teach a generation of Ateneans who will genuinely be men and women for others. Yes, we form you to excellence, but we hope that you'll use that excellence for service. And guidance, published it in full. They agreed that this was, my address captured the call of the down from the hill. That was quite important because it was a question. You have to understand that at that time, the student council, there were also battles between extreme left, middle left, and so on. So there was also a battle for control of the Ateneo student body. So it was quite important that student body resonated with what I was saying at that time. Very, very important for the actual practical implementation was the floods of 1972. If you think we have a lot of rain now, in 1972, from like the end of May till the end of July, for 2 months, we never saw the sun. It was continuous rain. And Central Luzon was totally flooded. And Ateneo students started to go there, Operation Tulong, first of all. But then the important thing is when things finally subsided, a group of students decided that they had to help in what we call rehabilitation. And so there was a group that started going every weekend to Central Luzon to work with the farmers. They formed what is called a student organization, Sarilika. And they were very visible on campus. They introduced a uniform of maong pants and white t-shirt. So they were very visible on campus. And we knew that they would be on campus for Monday to Friday, and then Friday evening they would go to Central Luzon and help. They lived a very simple lifestyle. So they were really, how should you look at it? They became quite an influence, very influence on us. So that was very important. And eventually they led to what we call the counterculture and the formation of what we eventually call the socially oriented activities. So the question then for me is how do we I have that speech, we thought we should work with the people. The question then is how do you translate that into institutions and institutional programs. The most important was OSCI, OSCI. Sorry. So we had OSCI. The main programs were what we call general orientation seminars, where we kind of told you about the injustices of society and so on, and began to talk about how do we solve these problems. So one was kind of social analysis, social orientation. And then the next one was, if you look at the files of OSCI, you still see all of those there. And then immersion programs. And immersion in those days was just that, was at least for a full week. And we only sent one student per barrio, only one. Not together so that they could not talk to each other, they had to talk to the farmers. So it was a very, how do you call it, intense immersion. We also had whole summer, we called them work camps, and faculty members joined. I remember joining them in Laguna over the summer. And eventually this came into the socially oriented activities, and as I said, a lot of it was inspired by the Sarilika workers. And then beyond that, we began to work with organized farmers groups, Pakisama, for example, workers, urban poor. We set up Workers' College, and for example, for those who know Mea and Ignacio, she was organizing workers along Guadalupe Beach. So they were really there organizing laborers. ORD, Office of Rural Development, working with farmers, I guess with Dean Abad and others. And then with the urban poor. I still remember being with Ateneo students in Rona's Garden when they were trying to demolish things in Rona's Garden. And then an overall center called Center for Community Services. So these were the programs and institutions that were connecting Ateneo students to the workers, farmers, and so forth. And OSCI is still around, it's still there. Curriculum. We had to respond to the need for a more relevant curriculum. Our previous curriculum was too American, too Western. So, for example, we introduced 9 units of Filipino. It was introduced in this time, required. And we said we had to have a bilingual policy. Ateneans should be fluent in both English and Filipino, not just one. I think before that it was okay to just use English, but this was the change. And then more social sciences, more units in Philippine history. We introduced the course you have now, I don't know if you still have it in psychology or in social science, was introduced in this period. And fortunately, many faculty also engaged. I remember in particular Susan Evangelista in the English department. She would assign students to maybe go and talk to urban poor, and then they would write their essays on that. So they integrated the connection with the poor with what was there. As Dr. Benji mentioned, we were not directly trying to confront martial law, but of course we got involved in martial law. Why? Because if you are students in the field, working with the poor, the National Democratic Front would try to recruit them, and the military would suspect them. So that was the reality of that time. Those of you who lived that period do remember that. But anyway, at a certain point, we got engaged with martial law. For example, you might remember there was a Laban election in 1978. Ninoy Aquino ran from prison. We worked very hard to get his group elected and so forth. But of course, the Imelda group won. And we had a long protest march. And at UST, they were stopped and arrested. So our whole student council was there. So the student council was detained for a while in Camp Picutan. So we did engage. And then in 1980, more serious, OSCI, which was at that time in Eliazo, was raided, and several were detained, some for quite a few months. So we did have those confrontations. And of course, some of our students, maybe some of them here, were invited to join political groups, underground groups, mostly social democratic groups. And moving further, after his assassination in 1983, it was really our students who were the organizers of a lot of the marches. In fact, Loyola House of Studies and the dorm were really centers for organization of all the marches during that time. So 1983 to 1986. So, but the point to make is that our focus in Ateneo during those years of martial law was primarily to connect with the masses. Nakabangga ang martial law because of doing that, but we were not trying to attack martial law directly. However, you got involved in martial law because if you're working with workers and farmers, you're suspected. So I thought Mr. Eddie Boy Calasanz, who was quoted earlier, had this to say in that book. Without bothering to confront the martial law regime directly, it was this vision of bringing Ateneo into closer and more authentic contact with Philippine realities that created a new relevance. What mattered were lived realities and living people. And it is this engagement that brought us to play key roles in the snap elections and the EDSA 1986. The National Democratic Front, the extreme left, was actually much bigger and much better organized, but they boycotted the snap elections. They did not participate. And so we ended up as the main organized group. When the snap elections came, we were the ones handling the, we were the ones organizing NAMFREL, we were the ones, so we played a very important role. And I would like to say that it's partly because I think we really tried to address the needs from the point of view of the workers and the farmers and the urban poor. We were not ideological. We were not going into the ideology. We were simply trying to address them, and maybe that helped. But anyway, we did. Okay, we can go some more of this later on. But the question now is, saan na ba tayo ngayon? Where are we now? Martial law is not here anymore, but the problems that led to the down from the hill and that are still here. So if Father de la Costa were to write again, he might look at this, he might look at this data. UNICEF says 95 Filipino children die of malnutrition every day. 30% of children, Filipino children, 0 to 5 are stunted. And the UN says 90% of Filipino children are reading or learning poor. Those are terrible statistics. So certainly we are not better off than we were in 1974. In some cases, we are probably worse off. So that's where we are. That's where we are today. But the other problem is that in the Society of Jesus today, we're being called with these universal apostolic preferences. There are 4 of them, but at least for me, none of them carry the passion and the force of the calls in the 1970s. You don't feel the intensity and the passion. It's very intellectual. You don't feel like running out and doing something when you see them. And so it does not capture like the men and women for others. It does not have the intensity of the service of faith and promotion of justice of our 1972 32nd General Congregation. I don't know how Dr. Bobby Gebb feels, but liberation theology at that time was also brought a lot of interest and passion. I don't know if you agree with me, but there's not much passion about these things today. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm simply stating that, so the force is not there. And then the church itself, the Pope Francis, of course, is very strong, both in word and action, about identifying and working with the poor. But we don't have a strong echoing from the bishops. At least I don't hear it. No? So the external environment does not have the intense push that it gave us in the 1970s. No? That's the world that we're in. And the university world actually calls us away from this engagement with the poor. In fact, several years ago, I was asked by editors of a book about university leadership to write about our experience, because for them it was unusual for a university president or university leader to actually be interested in social engagement. No? That was simply very unique, and so they asked about that. It was not something that we talk about. And certainly, in all the meetings I've attended as university president, there's no discussion of these things. No? It's simply about publications, it's simply about rankings, and so on. So the university world also pulls you away from these things. So in fact, I can send you the article. I wrote an article called Political Extremes in the Philippines, Academic Leadership and Social Engagement. And so I wrote that we at the Ateneo understand that we are in the international university world, and we must aim for excellence and competitiveness in teaching and scholarship. But I also said, but beyond the academic, however, Ateneo de Manila always defined itself in terms of the Philippine nation. For example, the little book that we came out with on the 150th of Ateneo, it says 150 years of engaging the nation. It's not 150 years of excellence. That's not what we wrote. That's not how we thought of our 150 years. It was 150 years of engaging the nation. We have always defined ourselves that way. Beyond academic, however, Ateneo de Manila always defined itself in terms of the Philippine nation. And so leadership always also demanded engagement with the social and political challenges facing the country. So the Ateneo heroes we're proud of, Rizal, Recto, and so on, Baglapos, engaged the country. So that's where we are. And then the world of the internet also pulls us away. I don't know how much you live in the world of the internet, but I'm sure all of us live a great deal in the world of the internet. And the things if you can ask you to think to yourself, how much of your conversation is about things that you saw on the internet? And how much of it is about day-to-day people you met? A lot of our conversations are about what are in our feeds in the internet. So, at least for me, with friends in Jesuit residence, we all know what's happening with the campaign of Trump and Kamala Harris, maybe Taylor Swift. We all know about that. We know about Ukraine, Gaza, and Lebanon. But how about the realities of ordinary Filipinos? How about the realities of our neighbors? Ronas Garden, Dangtubo, Pansol. How often do they come into our consciousness? Hardly, because they're not on the internet. We don't get much feeds from reality. Reality rarely becomes the influence on us. What comes into us is through the virtual world. That's more and more our cell phones. A lot of what comes to us is through our cell phones, not somebody you met in there. That is also changing our perception of reality. So they rarely do because they're not in the media or the internet feeds. And because of this, I see this all the time, our country has bifurcated into an upper class, English, living in an English world, majority of us here. Our consciousness and conversation is shaped by the English internet. And we are very connected to the world. I'm sure all of you know what's happening in the world today because of the internet. But do we know what's happening next door? That's the problem that we face. So the majority poor, the other ones striving to survive, they appear on Facebook. That's the only one they can afford. But they don't write in English on Facebook. And of course, you don't get it unless you're already friends with them. So the two worlds hardly connect, except perhaps in times of disaster, and through those individuals and organizations who go down and reach out, connect, and help. I'll tell you the impact. It comes from a very recent experience. I am on the advisory council of EDCOM. I work on the basic education. And in our meetings, our last meeting, they were talking about the need for a stronger assessment of what's happening in education. And they were talking about we need an independent assessment body. So a new group with experts. And secondly, they were talking about what they had learned. The leaders in EDCOM had visited Singapore, then visited Australia, then visited the US. And they were thinking of the wonderful things that they saw there and how we can do the same thing here. I wanted to tell them, we don't have the people who can do that. We don't have the Filipinos who can do that. For example, assessment needs a very good control of statistics. We don't have that. And I saw that also from my work in science. We have so few really in that area. And I wanted to tell them, don't you understand what the statistics are that you're quoting? 95 Filipino children die of malnutrition every day. 20% are stunted, 90% learning poor. The Filipinos who could be doing that today were lost long ago. They died young, or their brains are stunted, or they never had a chance to get a good education. So they don't exist. We keep telling ourselves, we need a good Secretary of Education that will change things. Even if we have the best Secretary of Education, there's not much he or she can do immediately. You don't have the people who can do it. Because these statistics have been true for the last 30, 40 years. It's not just now. And when you talk about the problems of teachers, well, these teachers are products of that system. We don't seem to look at reality. And so we cannot solve the problems. What we do normally do with our problems? Well, EDCOM, what they did is they visited Singapore, they visited Australia, they visited the US. And then so itong ginagawa nila, ito gawin din natin. So anyway, it illustrates for me the problem of living in that world and not really connecting with reality. We are this. If you ask me what is the most challenging problem we face as a country, it is our disconnection. Those of us who can make decisions, our disconnection from reality. We don't really. I've been working with public schools for the last 40, 50 years, and I can tell you that the majority of Filipinos have no idea of the challenges that are faced there. So anyway, that's the problem that we face. And unfortunately, the only way you can know them is not by books. They don't appear in the books. These are not there. The only way you can connect this thing is to go down and look. That's the only way. There's no other way to get to know the realities of the public schools. There's no other way to know the realities of these things except by connecting down. Because they don't appear in the books. They don't appear in the media. So, what do we move forward? We tend to look at our problems strictly in terms of political, economic things. But they're deeply cultural, or they're very much a question of our consciousness as a people. And so I want to invite you to reflect in the book of Pope Francis called Let Us Dream, which he wrote during the pandemic. He said, he talked about becoming a people. He says, the only way to overcome our problems, the ones I've mentioned to you, and move forward is to become a people. A people is not the same as a country, a nation, or a state. A people is forged in shared struggle and hardship. A people shares experiences and hopes. And because it shares experiences and hopes, it hears the call of a common destiny. So if we're going to move forward, we can never get started unless we enter a shared experience and culture. The economic and political development may follow, but they will never follow in a good way if we don't have this. In fact, long ago I wrote an article called about becoming a people. So, I think of two examples. I think our conversations would change if, for example, instead of looking at statistics of 90% reading poverty, you might volunteer to go to Old Balara Elementary School. I have friends who go there. And they tutor the poor readers. The teachers pull out the students who are slow, who are not reading well. And I have friends who go there and tutor them. Of course, they get very frustrated, but our conversations are about reality. They're about these children, about their families. And so and the teachers, and you begin to talk about reality and maybe have a shared future. Or, this is actually a very interesting example. There's a YouTube video of Hawi Sivereno. You should watch if you haven't. It's called Boat to School. It's a story about a little sitio Liaonan in Siargao, very poor one, where a lady, Nanay Jen, she only finished first year high school herself, but in her sitio, nobody else could read or write. And she took it on herself to tutor the children. And and then bring them to school. Friends have seen it and have been very moved by it. But the point I point to you is the friends have connected with them. I've connected them with so they now connect on Facebook. And so now they begin to talk about each other. They begin to see how the progress of the children are going. So it's possible to connect, but you have to make a connection first. Then why do I mention this to you? Because we have to shift our consciousness and conversations away from Kamala Harris. And that's quite fine, but that's not us. No? We have to begin to converse among ourselves. We have to begin to converse with the teachers in Old Baral Elementary School and with people outside. That is the only way we can become a people. We have to share experiences and talk with one another. Just imagine if each one of us did something like that, I think it would change our conversations. It would change our conversations. So our conversations may then be about shared dreams and struggles with our people. They will be part of our journey to becoming a people. I do go a lot to these things, but I don't really know. I cannot really share it with my Jesuit community because they're not there and they're not interested. So I end up sharing it only with the friends in Marawi or the friends in Sulu. I cannot share it with my own community. So sana even just on Facebook, we could begin to think about these things. So the first point is we have to begin to have shared experiences, even via Facebook, and connect and change our consciousness and our conversations. And then maybe you can begin to do something. We actually aced with the SWD as actually a very large-scale reading program called Tarabasa. Our first take, we were able to do 35,000 children, poor readers in Metro Manila. I can tell you the details. It's run by Ateneo Center for Educational Development and the SWD. If you want details, I can explain it to you. But you could join that. And many Ateneo teachers, especially grade school and high school, joined that. So we talk about the problem of poor readers, non-readers. We are trying to do something on a big scale on it. You could volunteer. You could volunteer for that. I'll show you a picture later on about Reading Center. But that is not enough. If the children are going to read, they have to continue reading. So you have to provide books for them. And so we also have a program, still small, to build very attractive libraries in public schools. I'll show you a picture of them. And then malnutrition. Instead of looking at statistics, ACE, Ateneo Center for Educational Development, if you go to the back of Ateneo Senior High School, on a Wednesday or a Thursday, we have Ami, I don't know if Ami's here, they're there. She can introduce you, and you can join the repacking. She can also introduce you to Tarabasa. She also handles that. So I'll mention that later to you. And then we have a Zero Hunger Alliance, nationwide, led by Century Pacific. The chairman, Chris Poe, is also in the Ateneo board, Gawad Kalinga and Ateneo, which really is trying its best to, I don't know if you can end hunger, but to make a real dent on hunger by 2030. It's a nationwide alliance. So beyond these little things, you can actually think there would be bigger ones. And what I do want to tell you, despite all the sad news that maybe the church is not doing enough and the Jesuits are not doing enough, we have our social engagement programs continue to produce students who really care. And I want to introduce some of you. So I do want to say that OSCI, our development studies program, the student organizations, our social development officers, ACE, Ateneo, Pathways, continue to influence. Maybe not everybody, and maybe not even the majority, but it continues to introduce, to form young people. Some of them are here. So, I want to introduce some of them. Love is the first one. I don't know if Dr. Sarah is here. I invited her. Well, maybe she's... But she's a doctor to the barrios that I've been working with. Is she here? Sarah, can you stand up? Okay. I've worked with her she's a doctor to the barrios for 3 years in San Jose de Nagat. I've worked with her there. She's a product of BSR Health Sciences, very much engaged in all of these things. Then I think, who's the next one there? Ami, I introduced Ami already, who's with ACE. I introduced them to you first because they're products of the social formation program, but also because through them you can connect to the bigger picture. For example, with Dr. Sarah, and then you have Chelsea over there. Chelsea is a very recent graduate. She is she's the head of the Secretariat for the Zero Hunger Alliance. So if you want to know anything about the Zero Hunger Alliance, she knows. And together with her is Clarice Enriquez, who's handling the partnership with Century Pacific. And Amber, Amber, come on. Amber is a graduate just last year. But she handles the partnerships for Seed Philippines. Seed Philippines is developing community farms. So we're realizing that in order to address hunger, we cannot just do feeding programs. We have to get people more and more to be as self-sufficient as possible. So we're really expanding, developing community farms across, and also connecting farmers, fishermen to markets, which is bayan anihan. So Amber is there. Okay. And they're part of a bigger group. I call it a new Sarilikha. We've been meeting with them for 2 years in a row now, and 23 and 24. And we've been meeting them in Mirador. I call them a new Sarilikha. Many of them are from Ateneo, but many of them too now come from the poor. They come from our Gao and Kalinga communities, and several Muslims too among them. So why do I mention these things to you? Because if we want to connect to these poor communities, we need mediators. We need people there on the ground who will connect us. We ourselves will not be able to do it directly. These young people will do that. So if you want to connect to workers, farmers, and so forth, you can talk to Amber, you can talk to Chelsea, you can talk to Clarice, you can talk to Ami there, and they will connect you. Many, many years ago, we said that if we're going to connect Ateneo to the masses, we need mediators. We cannot go directly. They are among the mediators. They know Ateneo, they know what to do, and they can connect you. And if you connect with them, hopefully, precisely, conversations will begin to happen. Will begin to happen among us. We'll begin to talk. Remember again, the goal is not primarily economic or political development, not primarily. It is to begin to have shared stories and shared dreams. From there, we will begin to talk about economics. But we will not get there unless we begin to connect, to know stories, to share stories, and to share shared dreams. So this is a group. The last picture I want to show you is about reading centers. I'm sorry. So Dr. Sarah and the School of Medicine and Public Health were actually building. I asked her what she really wants. She said, zero open defecation, build toilets, because it's just affecting very much the health of the children and others. So we're doing that. But beyond that, Ateneo School of Medicine and Public Health is really trying to make the Universal Healthcare Act work. That's very crucial for the future. And then, of course, I mentioned already Chelsea and Clarice, and Ami and Amber. So together with them, we can start, and with Pope Francis dream together and become a people. Last one is, I would like to tell you that we're doing this. How do we scale? We're doing it town by town, city by city. You cannot do the whole country. And very happy to tell you that we have some success with my hometown. My hometown and Father Dakanai's hometown. We both grew up in the same town, Bacnot and Lonia. We look for promising mayors, and our mayors there over the last 20 years have been quite good. And so the mayor has really attended to hunger. So they have very good feeding programs. And we had a Zero Hunger Summit there. They did very, very well. And they actually got an award, Walang Gutom Award recently from the SWD. And then they're also doing reading. They've done quite well on improving the reading to students. And last one I want to show you is that they have actually, you cannot see it very clearly. I don't know if you can see, but we created a very attractive reading center, very colorful. And what we find is that if you look at it, you see even the floor is very colorful. And we find that the children love to read lying down on the floor. It's a favorite position that they have. And so what we find is with these reading centers, the children really love to go there. They really love to go there. Sometimes they cannot read very well yet, so they just look at the books. But gradually they begin to read, gradually. So, in other words, we can move forward and reading. So I said to you earlier, why don't you consider volunteering to tutor kids in Old Balara or other elementary schools? And maybe talk to people to build a reading center, something colorful. And their favorite, and the favorite books are in Filipino, obviously, not English. So they're in Filipino. And they love the Adarna books. And that's what we're trying to give to them. Something. And then, of course, my hope is that when you do this, you begin to talk to the children, you begin to talk to the teachers, you begin to talk to the parents, and share dreams with them. So we have to break this non-communication between us in the English internet and the rest of the Philippines. That will not solve our problems immediately, but it will get us to work together and together find a solution to our problems. Thank you very much.
Sige, one more round of applause po for Father Ben. Thank you, Father. Okay. For the second half of our program po, and coming off from Father Ben's talk on the topic of connection and conversations, we'll have a short conversation po, and we'd like to invite our three special guests and reactors po to the couch to join us here for this conversation po. Please allow me to introduce them po as they make their way to the couch. Our first reactor is si Dr. Ma Assunta C Cuyegkeng. She's a professor at the Department of Educational Leadership and Management of the Gokongwei Brothers School of Education and Learning Design, or GB SEALD. She is the executive director of the Lily Gokongwei Ngochua Leadership Academy and the ASEAN University Network on Education, on Ecological Education and Culture. She's also the managing editor po of the Journal of Management for Global Sustainability. Doc Achut received her bachelor's and master's degrees in chemistry po from Ateneo and her doctoral degree in chemistry from the University of Regensburg in Germany po. And nasabi na po ito ni Doc Benji earlier, but she was a first-year college student, the second batch of women po in the Ateneo when Father Ben Nebres gave his speech, Ateneo in Service of the Nation. Our first reactor po, Doc Achut Cuyegkeng po. Sige. Our second reactor po, who'll go after Doc Achut, is si Dr. John Paul Bolano, or si Lance. He is an assistant professor at the Department of Theology of the Ateneo de Manila University. He recently finished his PhD in theology at the Loyola School of Theology. He is currently the cluster coordinator for the course Theo 12, A Catholic Social Vision, which he has taught since 2013. Friends, please put your hands together for Dr. Lance Bolano po. Okay. And certainly last but not the least, our last reactor is a current student who serves as the current Sangu president of the university po. Lean C Rosendo, or si Lee, is a current senior taking BS Psychology and a minor in Education, who is also a counselor for the Sangguniang Kabataan. He is a financial aid and DOST scholar and is a member of orgs such as Gabay and is part of the OSCI Student Volunteer Program. Okay. Allow me to read this bit po from him. Siya'y tubong Zambales at mula sa simpleng pamilya ng mga guro at magsasaka. Friends, our current Sangu President and OSCI Student Volunteer, please put your hands together for Lee. Okay, sige. Okay, grab ahead. So, we'll sit on the couch po. I asked si Father Ben to join us, but he wants to watch us po from there para mas maganda daw view niya. Sige po. Doc Achut, sige po.
Okay. So as was mentioned, I was a freshie in 1974, and I did not hear Father Ben's talk because it was given to the faculty. But I felt it very much in our education, both in the formal and extracurricular activities. I studied at STCQC, St. Teresa's College of Quezon City. So I had been exposed to these kinds of values already early on, but it was reinforced when I came to the Ateneo. And as a freshman, or as a freshie, I remember very clearly attending in my first year workshops facilitated by the likes of Butch and Dina Abad, Ging Jojo Deles, and Dange and Kaka Medel. They really helped form my social awareness, my social consciousness. When I entered Ateneo, most orgs had been disbanded because martial law had, forbidden assembly. No? But in 1974, Father Pat Giordano of the Theology Department and Tony Pineda of Math Department were resurrecting the Ateneo Student Catholic Action as one of the socially oriented activities that Father Ben had talked about. And I joined it, and that was where I grew both in the social and spiritual aspects. When Father Francis Riley took over, he truly shaped us in Ignatian spirituality. This was supplemented by our theology courses. We had a course on the theology of liberation, as well as another course on issues. Even the plays on campus helped because the plays then were influenced by Rolando Tino and other socially aware faculty members. But in everything we did, most of us, especially those in the socially oriented activities, ATSCA, ACLC, ASIL, we took to heart the motto, men and women for others. We tried to live simply. We tried to understand how we could contribute to and change unjust structures. Eventually, I became part of the social democratic group underground. And then I left for my studies in Germany. And that was a respite from student activism, but it did not dim the idealism and the beliefs because now they were very deeply rooted. So I share with you some of my own reactions. First of all, I share many of the observations of Father Ben. I also find the lack of passion and force for the true spirit of the men and women for others now. And it's not about ideology. It's not about protesting for the sake of protesting, but about discernment for every decision we made, so it was consistent with how we lived our life. Today, when we protest, I sometimes am surprised that we expect the university to call off classes so we are not penalized for being absent or not submitting a paper. Service of faith and promotion of justice, I think, is not second nature to us anymore. But I still encounter people who have it, and that's why I am inspired. There are still, like those who are here, who are with Father Ben. And it's very important knowing how to go about in our current context, because our mission is in a changing environment. What I also find a bit, I don't know if it's worrying or disturbing, but I find that sometimes mission is not as important anymore to our faculty and students. Most come for the brand of Ateneo. We had to start, but we have to start there and change minds as we go along. And I think we have made some conversions in the process. The means to the mission, that means how we serve the nation, can also come in different forms. I'm not a good fundraiser or social influencer, but I think I am good enough in educating teachers and business people to pass on the message of service to others. And so it's important for us to find out where we can best do our share. I just wanted to say a little bit something about rankings, because in 97, 98, I was acting dean when Asia Week came out with a survey of Asian universities. And then when the QS rankings came in 2006, that was my first year as VP for the Loyola schools. So I've had a lot to do with balancing these rankings thing. We had to balance it because it affected our could affect our enrollment, because people were looking at where to go, no? But it also affected the way the way we would recruit faculty, because you want the best faculty to come to our university. So, but the problem was we could not necessarily get faculty with the same vision, and our younger generations have, as Father Ben, I think, has said, there are a lot of distractions. But I want to share with you a statement that Father Ben and I put together in 2006. I don't know if you remember this. It was, in my notes, it was dated November 16, 2006. We said, rankings in the Times survey are important because they measure how the world perceives us. But just as a person has to take what people think of them in the context of their own values and priorities, we too have to reflect on these perceptions and measures within our own view of our mission, of our vision and mission. Thus, while we will work on strengthening our research and publications, we need to do this in a way that does not move us away from our vision and mission and our traditional strengths: leadership formation and contribution to national development. These have to continue to be our priorities as a Jesuit university, committed to the service of faith and the promotion of justice as a university in the Philippines whose greatest challenge is overcoming poverty and national development. Ateneo in the service of the nation has to be translated to a personal level, to the life that we lead, to the service that we give to the nation. But it is not always easy for my generation. And I speak especially as a woman with few resources. As a poor student, the easy part was that I easily identified with the poor. But it is not easy to choose a low-paying job, such as teaching here in the Ateneo. But I did it because it was my calling. And I had a support system. My parents, no matter how poor we were, gave me room to make choices, even if a corporate job could have made life much easier for them. Or maybe they just knew that I was stubborn. As a woman at that time, there were many expectations with little support system, especially if one gets married and starts a family. I managed because I had a partner and family who shared the same values and vision. Today, those who go into this kind of commitment need not only idealism and hope, but also courage and resilience. And so the challenge is to find our own place in this service of the nation. My decisions have been inspired by the spirit of Father's talk of 50 years ago. I have served the university more than 40 years, and despite difficult times and difficult people, I have stayed because it is really about this mission to help form men and women for others. I am truly lucky to have been a student with Father Ben as my dean and VP for the Loyola schools when he was the president. His vision, his commitment and love for the poor has influenced greatly who I am today. Thank you, Father Ben.
Sige. We'll jump straight to Lance. And Father, you will be happy to know this po. Si Lance was si Doc Sarah's theology teacher po.
Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Lance, ako po ay guro ng teolohiya. Nagtuturo po ako ng teolohiya ng Katolikong pananaw hinggil sa lipunan. So deliberate po yung paggamit ko ng wikang Filipino dahil matagal ko na po itong tinuturo sa wikang Filipino. At karamihan po sa mga ibabahagi ko ay mula sa karanasan bilang guro at yung mga pagninilay at siguro yung mga interaksyon sa mga estudyante ko, lalo-lalo na yung mga natatanging mga pagkakataon na hinahamon din po akong mag-isip at pagnilayan yung mga naibigay ng mga punto ni Father Ben. Bago ko po ilatag yung pagninilay ko tungkol sa pagbabahagi ni Father Ben, ihahayag ko din po yung lugar ko sa lipunan, katulad po ni Doc Atchut. Kasi sa klase po namin, bahagi ng mga pangunahing babasahin yung akda ni David Diggs na We See From Where We Stand. Pinag-uusapan po namin sa klase na malaki ang kinalaman ng lugar natin sa lipunan, lalong-lalo na ng mga pribilehiyo o kawalan nito, sa kung paano natin tinatanaw ang ating sarili at ang mundo mula sa lugar na yon. Kaya po ang aking pagninilay mula sa punto de vista ng isang hindi nakapagtapos sa Ateneo sa undergraduate. Ako po ay tubong Batangas, kaya po pag ako po ay nagtatagalog sa klase, takot na takot po lalo yung mga estudyante. Baka po mas malalim kasi yung Tagalog. Pero pinalad po akong makapag-aral dito sa Ateneo sa paaralang graduado sa pamamagitan ng isang scholarship sa Formation Institute for Religion Educators ng Theology Department at sa pamamagitan po ng Faculty Development Scholarship para po sa aking PhD na tinapos ko po sa LST. So yun po yung isa kong kondisyon na pinagmumula ng pagninilay. Kaya dahil po dito, maaaring hindi ko lubos na naunawaan ang lalim at pasikot-sikot ng kulturang Atenista kahit sa kabila ng 10 taon na ng pagtuturo dito. Maaring hindi ko pa rin talaga alam kasi hindi ko naman dinaanan. Ito rin din ay nagmumula sa karanasan ko mula sa pagtuturo ng Theo 12, dating Theo 141, na nung panahon ni Ma'am Atchut ay yung Theology of Liberation. Sabi ko nga sa mga estudyante ko sa mga unang linggo ng semestre, napakaswerte ninyo kasi tinuturo ito sa panahon natin kasi nung panahon ng mga 1970s, baka kung nandun ka sa loob ng classroom, baka nakasama ka dun sa raid ng Ateneo. Dahil napakadelikado nung kurso. Maraming mga konsepto at saka paraan ng pagsasaliksik at pag-aanalisa sa iba't ibang mga realidad ng lipunan na maaring makagambala sa mga sensitibidad ng ibang mga tao. Kaya po karamihan sa mga puntong ito ay mula sa punto de vista ng classroom, mga pagninilay, mga kaisipan. Nabaling ko po yung attention sa akin nung mga binanggit ni Father Ben na para pong may tatlo akong napansin na pagtulay sa lubid, paninimbang, para pong paghigit sa dalawang magkabilang direksyon na parang kwerdas ng gitara. Yung una po na paninimbang ay mula po dun sa tanong ni Father Ben dun sa kanyang talumpati na tinanong niya din ngayon at pinagnilayan, anong silbi ng Ateneo sa paglilingkod sa bayan, lalo na sa ating mga kababayan dukha at sinasantabi? Sa mas accurate na English, what is the role of an elite school in the service of a nation, of our nation? At bilang training sa pag-aaral ng Biblia, kailangan maging maingat sa pagbabasa ng mga salita at kahulugan nito. Napatanong ako at medyo controversial yung pagbanggit ni Father Ben doon sa salitang elite school. Kaya yung unang paninimbang ko po ay, elite school ba o school for the elite? Yung tanong ni Father Ben ang nagbunsod sa kanya na magnilay sa lugar at gampanin ng Ateneo sa paglilingkod sa bayan. So, ang ibig bang sabihin ni Father Ben sa pagbabanggit niya ng elite school ay ang pamantasan ay katangi-tangi, mahusay, at magaling? O ang pamantasang tinutukoy niya ay tanging para sa mga nakakataas lamang sa lipunan? Alam nating yung una yung mas pakahulugan, pero hindi ko maiwasang itanong kung nananatili pa rin ba tayong pamantasang para lamang sa mayayaman. Kung totoo ito, paano kaya magbabago ang paraan ng ating pagkapamantasan kung hindi lip service lang ang ating pagbaling sa mga mahihirap nating kababayan? Sangayon ako kay Father Ben na bahagi nito ang pagkilala sa ating kapwa, pakikipag-usap sa kasama nila, at gamit ang wika nila. Bahagi ng mga bunga at trust ng Ateneo tungo sa Filipinisasyon ay ang lugar ng Ingles at Pilipino sa curriculum. Hindi rin lingid sa kaalaman ng lahat na isa ang teolohiya, lalo-lalo na yung tinuturo namin teolohiya, ang isa sa mga kursong nagtuturo ng bilingual. Pwedeng ituro sa Ingles, pwedeng ituro sa Filipino. Kaya lamang nitong mga nagdaang semestre, lalo-lalo nakapansin-pansin pagkatapos ng pandemya, napansin ko at ng ilang mga kasama sa cluster sa TU12 na bumibigat ang hamon na kumbinsihin ng mga estudyanteng kumuha ng teolohiya sa Pilipino. Hindi ko alam kung bakit, pero lagi na lang kaming naglo-load rev out from Filipino class to English. At mas naramdaman ko yon lalo na ngayon na ako na mismo yung nag-handle ng load revision. Ang hirap ipaliwanag sa mga estudyante na kailangang balansehin ang dami ng estudyante sa bawat klase ng mga guro. Pero para sa akin, isang tanda ito ng isang hamon na kinakaharap natin. Kung sa wika pa lang ay umiiwas na tayo, paano pa kaya yung bridging cultural divides na pinapangalandakan natin? Ganon din, kapansin-pansin din ang pagbaba ng interes ng pagpunta sa area, lalo-lalo na sa mga socially oriented activities na meron tayo. Tama si Father Ben, hindi nawala at nakakatuwa kung paanong umusbong at nabuo ang OSCI at iba pang mga opisina sa pamantasan, bunga ng mga pangyayari nung panahon na yon. Kaya lamang kapansin-pansin po, at ito bilang cluster head ng TU12, dati kasi nung sina Doktora Sara yung estudyante ko, kapag live-out immersion yung area, yun yung pinag-aagawan talaga. Pero ngayon, parang kahit dyan na lang sa may katipunan, parang ayaw na ayaw pa. Maraming mga dahilan, maaring ang bigat ng school at workload ang pumipigil sa mga estudyante para kumuha ng mga area sa labas ng Maynila. Maaring ang takot ng mga magulang para sa kaligtasan ng kanilang mga anak o kahit yung mismo mga estudyante. Pero sa palagay ko, tanda din ito ng hamon na kailangan natin na harapin. Paano kaya natin natutulungan na makonscientize yung mga estudyante para higit silang makisama, makasalamuha, makilala, at higit sa lahat, matutumula dun sa mga dukha na sinasabi natin gusto nating makilala. Ikalawang paninimbang, paghabol ba sa kahusayan, yung sinasabi ni Doc Atchut na university rankings, excellence versus paglilingkod sa bayan. Alam nating lahat na hindi ito mutually exclusive. Sang-ayon ako na kung gusto na talaga nating maglingkod sa bayan, kailangan nating maging tunay na mahusay at linangin ang ating talento at talino. Pero hindi ko rin maiwasang maitanong, ang paghahabol ba natin ng husay ay para kanino? Naiipit o nagpapaipit pa rin tayo sa magkabilang persa ng pagtatanong kung alin ang higit na mahalaga? Ang pagtuon sa pagbuo at paglilinang ng ating bayan o ang tawag na makipagsabayan sa hamon na maging isa sa mga pangunahing pamantasan? Palagay ko sa lalim at lawak ng ating saklaw at impluensya bilang pamantasan, ang marapat nating gawing sukatan ay kung ito ba ay tungo para sa ating mga kababayang nahihirapan. Kung ito'y para lamang hagudin ang ating balikat para patunayang mahusay tayo sa lahat, parang mali yata. Ikatlong paninimbang, paghuhubog sa mag-aaral o paghuhubog ng mga kasama nating komunidad. Malinaw na malinaw to dun sa speech ni Father Ben, kung mababasa ninyo. Maliwanag na sinabi din niya na hindi naman kaagad na magtutuon tayo ng pansin sa direktang social work kasi pamantasan tayo. Pero hindi minsan kong narinig sa mga estudyante ko, lalo-lalo na kapag hinahanda namin sila sa immersion, ay yung pagtatanong na, Sir, bakit parang ginagamit lang natin yung mga kababayan natin? Bakit parang pag pumupunta tayo doon, ginagamit lang natin sila para hagudin yung ego natin, para masabi na natulungan natin sila? Hindi ko rin maiwasan na sa paghahanap ng sagot sa dilema na to, yung sagot sa aking klase ay hindi ko rin masabi. Oo, nandun na tayo, kailangan nating hubugin yung mga mag-aaral, yun ang pangunahin nating trabaho. Pero sa lawak at lalim ng impluensya natin bilang Ateneo, hanggang doon na lang ba talaga tayo? Bakit parang nakukulangan pa rin yung pagbuo at paghubog sa mga komunidad na meron tayo? Kaya kahit paano nakakabuhay ng loob na binabanggit ni Father Ben, na sa maliliit na paraan, sa bawat bayan, sa bawat syudad, sa bawat komunidad, merong mga pockets of hope. Merong mga lugar kung saan makikita at masisilayan ng pag-asa. Pero magandang pag-isipan kung hanggang doon na lang ba talaga. Mula po doon, siguro, baka ang lahat ng mga nabanggit ko ay labis na. So maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Doc Lance. Malapit na mag 6:30, so we'll jump straight to Lina. So,
Kung sila sir no, nahihirapan sa pag-load to drive out, no. Ako, I'm proud to say lahat ng philo classes ko po ay Filipino. Mula metaphysica, filosofiya ng relihiyon, tapos etika. Filipino. Mahirap, kahit Tagalog na, sumusulat ako sa Campus Journey before. Mahirap, iba talaga yung Tagalog dito. Sa Philly 11 pa lang nun, parang, ay ganito pala, iba pala. Akala ko pag Manila, hey yo bro, mga ganun. Iba pala dito sa Manila talaga. Grabe yun. Pero proud ako kasi nahasa po yung pananalita ko sa Tagalog dito. Siguro doon ako magsisimula sa nabanggit ni Sir, yung pagbaba ng participation ng students sa social formation activities. No? Isa sa mga konsepto na naalala ko sa speech ni Father Ben ay yung self-emptying. No? Yung pag-ubos o let's say yung pagbigay ng sarili para sa benepisyo ng iba. It will never be that easy. In fact, this process of emptying is not just centered on the tangible aspects. Hindi lang to sa bigay ng pera, donation. Most of the time, it requires the intangible ones. The dreams, the aspirations that we have. Kasi doon natin mas nakikita na, kakapwa ko pala to. Kasama ko pala to sa lakad ng buhay. Kasi recently lang sa Freedom Wall, may nabasa po ako, no? Sabi doon, NSTP is becoming more and more performative. Bakit nga ba? Kanina nakaka-proud kasi yung mga produkto ng formation program ang layo na lang narating. Pero bakit ganoon ngayon yung tingin ng Atenista sa formation programs natin? Siyempre, it's not enough to be an evidence not to say that we can generalize the whole NSTP program as performative. There are a lot of external concerns, conditions as well that we are not in control of. But maybe pwede nating pag-nilay-nilayan ulit kung nasaan na nga ba patungo yung layunin natin sa social formation programs. No? Nais kong ikwento yung naging encounter ko with Nanay Robilin, isang dumagat sa Tanay Rizal. Pumunta kami doon noong April 7, tapos kinwento nila yung buhay nila. Sa isip ko that time, ang simple ng pamumuhay nila, sobrang simple. Pero kung titignan mo yung kinakalaban nila, di ba, San Miguel, ayan, Chinese corporations, tinanong ko si Nanay, bakit po? Bakit ito yung kinakalaban nyo? Sadyang parang David and Goliath yung dating eh. Sabi niya, kasi po buhay namin to. Buhay at kabuhayan. Kinabukasan. Kung dadalahin natin yung ganitong pananaw sa Ateneo, ano nga ba yung one big fight natin? Is it the basketball title? Every UAAP season. Pwede, sir, di ba? Pwede. Pride. Sense of belongingness. Di ba? Pero siguro yung mas akma na maging one big fight natin, no? To find the beauty, the sincerity, the genuineness in all the service that we do. Kasi when I started joining the student council here, I knew that it's gonna be like hell of a roller coaster ride. Saliw, halo-halong ingay, hilahan dito ng ideolohiya, punta tayo doon, sigaw tayo dito, rally tayo dito, magreklamo tayo kay Doc Vilches, magreklamo tayo kay ganito. Ang Doc Vilches, ang budget, ang tuition. But karapatan natin yun, di ba? Yun yung Atenista na handang sumigaw, handang kumilos, handang gumawa. And what makes this genuine change possible? It is the courageous and intuitive vision of one or more persons who embody the spirit of change. As we know, a lot of Atenean leaders serve as catalysts of change during the martial law. Kaya minsan yung tanong dito, kailangan bang mamatay para maging bayani? Palagay mo, sir? Depende. Sana hindi, di ba? Depende siya. Pero ang mahalaga kasi yung pinapanghawakan nating prinsipyo bilang mga Atenista. Ako po ay isang scholar. Tuwing enrollment, tinitignan ko palagi yung tuition receipt ko. Sabi ko, 180,000 pesos. Ma, sabi ko. Wala kaming kalabaw na maisasangla. Wala kaming bukid na maibebenta. Pero ang sabi niya sa akin, kung ano yung nakuha mong kabutihan, ibalik mo sa kapwa. And that's why I'm proud to say that I want to pursue teaching. The noble profession of teaching. Gaya ng sinabi ko po kanina. Yung lola ko, guro. Yung isa ko pang lola, guro din. Nakita ko yung passion nila na it always starts with nurturing young ones. And now, the challenges that we have in our country now, with the Secretary of Education, the confidential funds, the EDCOM reports, and everything. And kung titignan natin yung mga sulat ni Amartya Sen, no, lagi niyang hin-highlight, education and health are the two main factors for a community to develop. Ngayon, nasaan nakalagay yung focus ng community natin, ng ating gobyerno, di ba? Ang gulo ng edukasyon, nagko-collapse yung health sector, ang daming problema. Ngayon, bilang mga Atenista, yung panawagan sa atin to be persons for and with others, and soon to be professional for and with others. Nais ko rin na babanggitin yung sinabi ni Father Ben na napakaraming oportunidad dito sa Ateneo, lalo na yung mga nasalihan ko na learning recovery programs, tutoring, donation drives, and relief operations. And yung recently, yung sa OSCI Volunteer Center Formation Program. Dito ko na pagtanto na iba yung pagpapakahulugan nila sa volunteerismo. Siguro sa pangkalahatan, no? Kasi when we say volunteer, it requires us to go there, pack the relief goods, uwi sa bahay. It's not that way. For the OSCI volunteers, volunteerism starts with the mind and the heart and the soul. Pag pumunta ka doon, hindi natatapos na, ay, naibigay na namin yung relief namin. Hindi ganon. Pag pumunta ka doon, ito personal, marirealize mo na, ay, ang dami pa palang pwedeng gawin. Ang dami pang dapat gawin. Ang dami pang kailangan ng tulong, ang dami pang kailangan ayusin at asikasuhin. And for me, that is the real value of being a student leader here in the Ateneo. As a scholar, I myself, I fear most of the time that what I'm doing is not enough for the representation, for the service of the community. But at the end of the day, I always reflect, no, ginawa ko yung kaya ko. At sana sa lahat ng mag-aaral, no, estudyante leader ng Ateneo no, sa susunod pang panahon, tandaan nyo rin yung halaga ng prinsipyo na meron kayo. Kasi kung anumang pagsubok yung dumaan sa atin, kung anumang hamon yan, mag-martial law part 2, wag naman sana. No? Kayo rin, tayo rin yung magtutulungan para rito. At nais ko ring ikwento kanina, galing po ako sa Balikbugsok, puro IPs, no? Dahil po sa Ateneo, kaya ako naging mas immersed sa IPs. Ito yung pinanghawakan kong advokasya mula nung sophomore year ko po. And ngayon, graduating na ako. Kanina galing ako sa Bugsok Forum. Noong nakaraang taon, lumapit na po sila sa amin. Kaso hindi naasikaso yung plano, hindi maayos. Parang on our end, medyo masama sa loob. Kasi umasa yung komunidad sa amin eh. But ngayon, lumapit ulit sila. Lumapit sila at bukas palad namin silang tinanggap. Ginawan po namin sila ng project team para doon. Kasi na-realize namin na sila yung lumalapit sa atin where in fact, tayo dapat yung lumalapit sa kanila. Naalala ko yung si Father Albert Alejo, tama po ba? Sabi niya, pumasok tayo sa loob, kumatok tayo sa loob. Yun yung dapat ginagawa ng Atenista. Hindi yung, tara book tayo ng Grab, let's go there. Well, minsan deserve naman natin sa pop-up, kung saan mang, di ba? Minsan lang naman. Pero wag sana natin kalimutan yung mas matindi nating bitbitin at responsibilidad sa komunidad natin. I may not speak to all of the 10,000 undergraduate students right now, no? But ito yung hamon ko sa atin. Kung noong mga nakaraang dekada, inimbita tayong lumundag, no, ni Father Ferrios, inimbita tayo ni Father Arupe na maging tao para sa kapwa. Ngayon, iimbitahin ko kayo na lumublob tayo sa masa. No? Kausapin natin yung tricycle driver. Kausapin natin sila ate kuya sa hallways. Kausapin natin yung mga nasa palengke. Kasi doon nabubuhay yung kwento. Yung mga kwento na dapat natin marinig. Kasi hindi sapat na matuto tayo sa 4 na sulok ng silid. Totoo po yun. Minsan yung mga teorya na yan, it ends just being discussed in the room. Hindi siya lumalabas. Minsan mas nakikita mo yun pag may nakausap ka na tindera sa palengke, na tricycle driver. And that's what I do. Yung pakikipagkwentuhan, yung pakikipamuhay. Kaya sana mas marami pang mag-aaral na maingganyo na makapagbinhi, punla, at bigkis. Napakaganda ng pangalan, binhi, punla, bigkis, di ba? Nagsimula tayo na itinanim, umusbong, at ngayon sama-sama natin itataguyod ang misyon ng Ateneo. And again, when you said yes, when you applied to the Ateneo, you already said yes to committing to the mission and vision of our university. And that is to be of persons for and with others, for the greater glory of God, for the greater cause of goodness for others and the whole humanity. Maraming salamat po.
We're almost out of time na, pero sige. I think I'll just speak for all the OSCI formators and the teachers when we say this, Lee. We are so proud of you. Okay, we are so proud of you. We have time po for just one question. Naka-pressure. Sige po. If there is anyone po who would like to ask a question to our esteemed reactors and to Father Ben po. Father Ben, if you would you want to... sige po. Sige po. He would like to stay in that wonderful seat po. That is the blessed Father Ben seat na po. Okay. If there's anybody who would like to ask a question po, please just come up to the mic, introduce yourself, and direct your question at someone po. Ayun, sakto. There's one student.
Hello po, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat. Ako po si Lorenzo Shera, isang first year freshie scholar din po. Naging malaking inspirasyon din po sa akin si Kuya Lee, kaya yung tanong ko din po ay para sa kanya. Nasabi niya din po lahat na 5 dekada na po ang nagdaan simula noong tulong-tulong po ang mga estudyante at mag-aaral ng Ateneo at ang mga administrasyon, faculty at ang buong kagawaran ng mga akademiko dito sa Ateneo ang lumaban para makamit natin ang kalayaan at hustisya para sa ating mga mamamayan. Ngunit sa pagdaan ng ilang mga araw, ilang mga taon, unti-unting bumababa ang mga bilang ng mga mag-aaral na patuloy na lumalaban para sa ating mga kapwa. At nasabi rin po yon kanina ng ating mga reactors na instead of celebrating kung saan na tayo ngayon, tila'y may kaunting disappointment po tayo dahil hanggang saan nga ba natin magagampanan ang ating responsibilidad bilang Ateneo sa pag-carry ng ating mission and vision. At sa ganun po, ang aking tanong ay bilang isang sangguniang Pangulo, Presidente ng ating sanggunian, sa tingin niyo po, paano natin muling maibalik ang bagsik ng ating mga kapwa mag-aaral at kapwa Atenista na lumaban muli para sa ating patuloy na hopes para sa ating kalayaan, hustisya, at para masolusyonan din ang ating mga problema sa ating panahon, ngunit nagbago na ito. At samantala, bilang observation din ngayon, ang mga kagaya ng OSCI, mga administrasyon ng Ateneo po, ang tila'y madami ang inisyatiba para sa pagbalik ng motibasyon ng ating mga mag-aaral. Ngunit hindi ko po masyadong nafe-feel iyon, kasi nga po, first year pa din po ako ngayon. Hindi ko po masyadong nakikita ang ganoong practice ng ating sanggunian sa pagbalik ng mga motibasyon ng ating mga mag-aaral. At paano din po natin muling may paramdam sa ating mga kapwa Atenista na sa bawat pribilehiyo na mayroon tayong kaakibat na responsibilidad at obligasyon na sumerbisyo sa ating kapwa. Maraming salamat po.
One paragraph yata yung tanong ni... Sir, oral exam pala ito. 4 minutes starts. No, ganun eh. Anyway, gaya ng sinabi ni Father Ben kanina, no, yung gusto ko i-highlight din doon na yung attempt, no, yung pagtugon ng Ateneo talaga, hindi siya political in nature. It's a social formation. Yun yung focus natin, di ba? To form persons for and with others. But of course, nag-iba ng panahon, 50 years from before martial law, no? So we should also assess if the current strategies, the current ideas that we have are still applicable. The traditional things that we do, are they still applicable? Kasi usually naman, hindi dahil sa kaunti yung dumadalo, ibig sabihin wala na silang pake. Minsan kulang lang sa engagement mismo, minsan kulang yung puso na naipapakita, no? Kaya nung umatanda ko ng Ayala Young Leaders, si Ate Nina Terol, kung kilala niyo po si Ate Nina Terol, dati ring sanggunian, no? Nung sinabi niya na, when you want to change the system, be part of the system. Kasi it's a hard reality that all of the oppressive and just structures that we have cannot be easily changed. It's easy to demand, right? But the length of the possible solution to enable to address that, matagal na proseso yon. So, yes, it's frustrating. Yes, it's saddening, but that's the truth. That's the system we have right now. And as students, we must acknowledge the fact that we have our own lives. So, instead of you asking someone, tara, magreklamo tayo doon, paano kung may personal problem yung isa? So, mahihirapan talaga tayong hikayatin siya kasi he or she doesn't see the impact of the action that you want her to do or you want him to do. So, in that kind of circumstance, on how Sanggunian could address that, no, on how our community could address that, maybe recalibrate and reorient again our social formation programs. Again, initiatives that the OSCI has been updated. I think it's recent 2000s siya, bago yung formation program niya. And kung pagbabasahin natin yung data yon, I reviewed it before I prepared my reaction. No? And actually, the data is good. The data is good. No? It shows that a lot of students are being engaged. But maybe the descriptors may not be accurate, may not be really, exact, strategically complementing to what we want to see. So in that sense, here in Sangguniang, like what our formators even said before, we does not subscribe to a specific ideology because the service is the ideology. And that's what the Sangguniang and what we do believe that the Ateneo would want us to achieve. Thank you. Baka may dadagdag po sila, sir.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you so much. Before we close this na po, I'd like to invite si Father Ben. Baka he'd like to share something po with our undergraduate students din po. Ito po, Father Ben.
I know that we want to solve the problems of the country, but what I want to tell you is that we will never solve them if we don't connect with our people. The big problem we have as a country is we are disconnected. That's what I try to communicate to you. So I'm not asking you to go and solve any problems. I'm asking you to consider connecting. We will never, I've been working with the public schools the last 50 years. We will never solve the problem of public schools until we spend some time with the public school. And I don't know how many of you have really spent time with the public schools and really get to know what the problems are in a real way. So that's my main message, actually. We are disconnected as a country. We are disconnected by language. So I see, for example, the Indonesian scholastics are so much more connected because they all speak Bahasa. No? So, unfortunately, the only way we can do that is to spend time. Spend time with the public school, spend time with the urban poor, spend time and really connect. So that's really my main message. After that, we can talk about solutions. But we cannot talk about solutions to things we don't know.
Sige po, we're a little bit over time, but I'd like to call on po si Doc Benji Tolosa again, just to close this ho. And just a little gift po for all of our reactors po. Can we invite our reactors tsaka si Doc Benji and si Father Ben just for a picture po in front? Ay, sige po.
Meron lang kaming konting tokens para sa, una sa reactors. Yung gawa ng isa sa mga partner communities ng OSCI, Solidarity for Orphans and Widows. No? So, bigay lang namin po sa inyo. For Father Ben, I hope you don't mind. We're giving you a picture when you were 34 years old, Father. This is from 50 years ago. I mean, minsan I can't believe, hindi ko makapaniwala na 34 years old si Father Ben. Na talagang hinubog niya tayo, no? But Father, marami pong salamat at sa nabigay niyo po sa lahat. And of course, the real gift, Father, is if we continue to engage, no, and as you called, to really be one with the people and understand and get to know them.
Just recognize Jojo and King Dallas. They were the pioneers of Australia. If you want to know the very early history, they were there. Ging was the first director, so anyway, for OSCI.
So yun po. So, sige.
Sige po. Just for a final, may we invite si Father Ben tsaka si Doc Benji just for a picture in front po also? Oh, okay. Sige po.
Sige, kayo muna, sir. Sila muna.